before we get started, I'm gonna have to tell you guys a few things first. First, while I admit I haven't been doing as much videos as I should be doing, though, as of lately, I personally think it's safe to say I'm trying all I can to cope with my mental health issues and everything. That being said, I am still in the process of getting better, and I hope to God that when I do these videos, that these two videos that I'm doing today hopefully entertain you. And honestly, yeah, they're Magical Girl podcast episodes, because I'm pretty sure you guys already know this really does help me cope at times, though. And the second, while I admit that these are going to be my next Magical Girl podcast episodes, I don't know when I'll be doing my next episodes on these here, because lately I have two that I haven't really been catching up so far lately, and I still have yet to watch them, but hopefully they'll be out sometime though. But I wanted to focus also on my Mother's Day and Father's Day videos as well, though. Those won't come out until May and June respectively, so if anyone's gonna ask when those will be out, time for Mother's Day and Father's quite the follow-up for my list. So without further ado, I hope you guys understand where I'm coming from, and hopefully this will make up for what I've done so far. So without further ado, let's go on with the Magical Girl podcast. Let's go. So it's no doubt that as you're watching this video, you may have noticed that I've been doing more Magical Girl podcast episodes as time goes on, though. And there are my reasons for it. While I admit this is something that I want to cope with, though, it's pretty obvious that while sometimes it could be one or the other, it's gone to the point where my Magical Girl podcast is something that I've been having since May of last year, in fact. Yeah, I can't believe it's almost been a year. Man, time flies. Nice, even when you have mental health issues. And yeah, my stress is still increasing and decreasing at the very least. I don't know how much it's been going on though, but due to the fact I'm still here, I might as well do the next Magical Girl podcast episode 17 and 18. Now these videos were originally gonna be around March, but considering the fact that I had so much time for my job and less time to do videos, I decided to do two videos for right now, and hopefully when I do my Mother's Day and Father's Day videos, I really do hope and pray that they'll be out soon, especially because I don't know when after Father's Day will be the next video, considering that summer is usually the worst time to do videos for me personally. Not saying it's a bad time for everybody, just for myself, especially for what's happened so far with my personal life and myself anyways. Now, after that live stream, I didn't say what was going to be my next video, considering that live stream I just did with Giratina and Maddie. Thank you guys for tuning in and for me and helping me out, because I did need that. I decided to do a Magical Girl podcast. But which one specifically first? Well, anyone who's been following me for a while already knows that I did a list of my favorite shows. Yeah, as you can tell though, that list of itself, while I admit it hasn't really done as well as I hoped it would have, though, I'm still thankful that I actually did that list, because like I said, there were a lot of favorite Jose and there were two. But which two, you're probably asking? Well, if you haven't seen my Jose anime list, though, I did say there were two anime that I wanted to talk about for a follow-up. Those being Magical Girl Ore, the subject for today, and Usagi Drop, which, God help me when I talk about both the anime and the manga. Though, spoiler alert, I recommend the anime over the manga any day of the week. though. Anyways, back to the subject at hand, though. I'm gonna be talking about Magical Girl Ore. You may have noticed that I talked about it very briefly in that's the reason of itself, and while I admit I personally think it's a safe bet that Magical Girl Ore may be one of the most, if not the weirdest thing I've ever seen out there, though. And this is coming from someone who is a JoJo fan, and if you think the JoJo fan is comparing it too much, though, and oh boy, you have never seen this show yet. But strap yourselves in as I talk about Magical Girl Ore and see why it's a guilty pleasure, and try to at least try to tell you guys how I feel about this. So, I guess let's get started, though. Now, I will say for a series like this, I'm gonna have to tell you guys the summary, again, if you haven't already seen my list, or if you want a brief recap, though. The series itself focuses around our main protagonist, Saki, who happens to be dreaming about becoming a magical girl, and as such, though, does what you expect for a magical girl to do. Fight off monsters, have a little mascot along her side, and basically, yeah, so her doing the stuff that everything does, though. However, after her getting up late, because that's never been happened before in a Magical Girl show, I'm sure of, and yeah, apparently she's with her best friends, Saya. These two go to a school that's known to do some idol work as well, though. However, after realizing that her crush, Mahiro, Saya's older her brother, has been kidnapped by demons, who are these teddy bear-like creatures, and as you can tell from there, though, the only way she can transform into said magical girl is if she says the person she loves, and she turns into a JoJo character, like I said before. And I'm not kidding you when I say that it sounds like to me that these are JoJo characters. I mean, the muscles and so much other stuff could have fooled anyone except for anything else, though. However, even after her words, though, we get Saki to have Saya come to do her magical girl stuff, though, and as you can tell from there, it's really what you expect, though. Weirdness ensues, and from there, since their idol work has been doing remarkably well with these here male forms, the girls themselves decide to use their male forms in order to attract more of an audience to sell more CDs as time goes on, though. Now, already, though, for a series like this, it's hard for me to stomach how I felt about this show originally, though. Yeah, I've seen other weird shows, don't get me wrong, but I'm not gonna mince words with you. I did say I only used this here series that came out of my memory. Though when it comes to a series like this, I'm not really sure how I should take it when it comes to a series like this in the first place, though. For one thing, it was based on a manga, because of course it was, and yeah, apparently this is definitely the case where I have to put my foot down and say that they really call it Magical Girl Ore, despite that it's really somewhat Magical Girl / Magical Boy, but it's also pretty clear it's a parody of those as well, though. Which, if you've been following me for a while, you already know I'm no stranger to parodies. Up there with fan service. Like, I'm not sure how one would take it, but others would say it's not as cringy as fan service, if anything to judge by. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, it's fan service is basically the opposite of fan service, where instead of having female characters showing off their things, they have their male character showing off their things or something like that. Now, I will say, though, for a series like this, I'm kind of confused on how I feel about this year's series in general, because despite being a very weird series, it can also be queer baiting, if I'm being completely honest. But for the way the series is structured, I'm really confused on what to think about it at first glance, because despite this being a Yuri and Yaoi thing going on, though, it's pretty clear that it's also queer baiting. I hear some people say the show is also transphobic, but honestly, I don't think it's supposed to be a transphobia show or anything. The girls are temporarily turning into guys, don't get me wrong, but I'm gonna say it's transphobia talking anyways, though, because as we all know, guys, transgender is only temporarily, so enjoy the gender that you wish you had when you were born. Oh, below me. When I say that this show is not transphobic, I really do mean it's not really meant to be transphobia talking, though. Because, get this, it's a parody, like I said, of the magical girl genre. This is something that I've talked about before now. And to be honest, I actually did talk about a magical girl series that was a parody series last year. Yeah, Q Earth Defense Club Kiss Kiss, or whatever you want to call it. Seriously, the whole title itself is such a jumbleful. I'm surprised my mouth is still here now. Yeah, the Q High Earth Defense Club, Love, and Kiss Kiss, or Happy, whatever you want to call it. At least when they actually did do a parody, they embraced with the parody itself, and while I admit it was weird, it's weird in a way you can still get a laugh at, and also know where the parodies are coming from, while still progressing from that, though. But when it comes to Magical Girl Ore, I'm not so sure if they really embraced it or not, considering that they do things weirder in hindsight. Which is not a bad thing, don't get me wrong, but I kind of feel like it's kind of all over the place when you get right down to it. Although, when it comes to the parodies in Magical Girl Ore, I can't tell whether or not they're just doing it because they're trying to poke fun at something like this, or if they're supposed to be queer baiting. Because, like I said, this show is kind of like a Yuri and Yaoi thing, like I said on my list, though. And if you know me very well, you know that I'm usually not a huge fan of the yaoi stuff anyways, though. I'm not saying that I don't care for yaoi or shonen ai. Hell, I actually did talk about, like, shonen ai series before then. Remember Pataliro? Yeah, on my birthday stream I did talk about Pataliro, but at least when it came to the queer baiting in there, while it did come out ahead of its time, no shit, because it did come out in the 80s, I think it may have been one of those shows that, while I admit it does have its moments to be weird, I mean, let's be honest, if you've seen Pataliro like I have, it is pretty weird, and you're talking to someone who watches weird stuff from time to time, like JoJo, so there you have it, though. What gives me for Pataliro is that, at least when it comes to the yaoi stuff in there, or Yuri, or whatever you have for your same-sex love couples, at least when Bunker and Mirage, yeah, I finally pronounced it right this time, considering they actually found a way to pronounce it when watching the series again for myself, though. Pataliro actually did seem like they already knew what they were doing when they were queer baiting, though, and while it was queer baiting, at least it felt like it was genuine, and you do see how these two men do fall for each other anyways. Compare that to Magical Girl Ore, I'm not sure if comparing that series would do any much favor, though, but at least I will give one thing to Magical Girl Ore right now. They never went so far as to do sexual assault, and this is something that I think a lot of, not just anime from nowadays always do, but it seems like a thing all the time. And here's the problem I have with the whole thing about the same-sex couples that I'm glad that Magical Girl Ore didn't do, but it does need to be addressed, though. When I brought up Pataliro, I did say that that's both Bunker and Mirage, before they met each other for years, though, they actually did establish that they were both sexually assaulted when they were younger. And to be honest, I hate to be this guy, but I never really like seeing this, though. Yeah, it does show intense moments, though, but I'm not gonna lie, showing even guys getting sexually assaulted is never a good look. And before you say, well, men did it to us women, and us women can get our hands on back, we should at least give some bit of leeway. My response to that is, it's not gonna help your case, and like it or not, men and women don't need to go through hell all the time, though. But back to Magical Girl Ore, when it comes right down to it, I'm not so sure if it would require me to do a lot more than just that in itself, but I'm not gonna mince words here with you. When it comes right down to it, I feel like the queer baiting also comes from when I say JoJo mixed with Magical Girl, that's what I meant. And speaking of JoJo, I think I have to point something out right off my chest though. You know how JoJo is really weird with their man service and usually do whatever they can in order to say they go weird, but they still went all with it though? Yeah, when JoJo came around though, I will admit it is weird. It's weird in a way I think I got accustomed to right away though. And honestly, despite the main characters being changed to every story arc though, at least it actually progressed with that man service, and thus they also did more than just say man service for the sake of that. Before you think gay, it's really gone to the point where I have to say one thing. Either being gay is not always a bad thing for myself as long as it's not played as a joke, because I hate it when people use it as a joke and nothing else. And there's also the fact that the own stuff when it comes to the stands, I can at least interpret they do a lot more than you may think what it has though. Magical Girl Ore does have its weirdness, but I feel like it doesn't feel like it's coming full circle until it gets near like that though. Magical Girl Ore is a show that I want to discuss more about though, but there was just too much for me to unpack in its package though. I guess what I'm trying to say here is that while I do think that Magical Girl Ore could be for a lot of people, I don't think it's recommended for everybody though. Let's put it this way, Magical Girl Ore is a hit or miss show for some people though. I wouldn't say it's a bad show, and I wouldn't say it was the worst show out there, if anything to possibly judge by though. Yeah, I would say that this is a show that you have to be in the right mood for, or you're probably gonna be stuck with saying that, what the hell is this show? Or like, when am I watching it though? And I guess what I'm trying to say here is that the show itself, it really depends on what you're looking for. It's really one of those shows that either makes you uncomfortable, or if it makes you feel like you need a good laugh at. But personally, I think that this may be one of those shows that just doesn't take the parody fully realized, but I'm probably in the minority when I say that though. Overall though, the show itself is average. Not the best Magical Girl show out there, but when I say that I went back on my memory to watch this show, I did mean that though. See, I liked this show when I first watched it, but nowadays when looking back on it, it's kind of like, say, what happens when I watch something that's just one of my times though. And up there with that club show that I mentioned before then, at least when I watched that show along with this when I was 23 years old, I'm just gonna say this right here and now. I only watched those shows because I had nothing else to do and such anyways though. So ultimately, Magical Girl Ore is still a show that is okay to watch. I wouldn't recommend it to everybody because, let's be honest, I know there are some people out there who will say the show is transphobic, and also due to the fact how much it would have been so much more than that, it would have stood out more than what could have been. If you are invested into Magical Girl parody shows out there, you can still watch this if you want, but I wouldn't recommend watching this in front of your own family or watch it at a young age. This is a josei anime, which honestly I find very surprising given how much there's a lot of man service in here, but from what I've heard, man service is made to appeal a certain audience. I don't know. I mean, I'm more interested in watching whatever I can out of my own taste, not necessarily looking for all of, just say, Magical Girl shows just like that. And plus, while I admit this may be one of the weirdest shows I've covered so far, it's nowhere near as weird as, say, Club High Earth Defense Club has, though. I only watched this show at 23 years old because I was bored, and I didn't really have that much to say on that matter, though. So, needless to say, that's what I have to say on this one. So, come with me next time as I talk about a Magical Girl show that's so obscure that I'm pretty glad that's forgotten. But until then, see you all in that next video.